Welcome in to the Four Verticals Podcast, episode 133 for October 7th, 2025. High atop, of course, a somewhat dry Jacksonville, Florida. Well, I say somewhat. It is dry here in Jacksonville, Florida. Somewhat of a Chamber of Commerce type day here. Nice, cool, kind of interesting as we sort of get later in the later into fall here, or more into fall, that especially here in Florida, we sort of see less and less of the 90s, and also have it on good authority that by this time next week might be a little bit cooler out there. So how about that? But of course, high top Jacksonville, Florida. Got a lot to discuss here. College football week 7 predictions, a smorgasbord of predictions. So this might be maybe not as big as that week after or before last week, like the Georgia Bama week, but it's only going to rival it. A lot of huge games this week and a lot of things to discuss. We have thoughts on, Sark, Franklin, other coaches we'll talk about. Of course, we have the Tuesday poll we do every single Tuesday. And we also have a reaction to Bucs Seahawks. So if you're new here, we do this show twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays around this time. If we have to move it around, we will. But usually around this time on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we cover college football for the most part. Marvel, Star Wars news for those of you who follow that stuff, and some NFL stuff for the Buccaneers. Is a band team, as you can tell, the hat here on YouTube. But a loaded show again. As I say, usually the show is independent media. Never talked to an advertiser before. If it's an advertiser we like, we may bring them on. But for the most part, this is independent media. The show's free, by the way. It's completely free of charge. It's not behind a paywall. It's on a Patreon page. It's completely free. Don't have to give me money or anything like that. If you do, that's fine, but we're not asking for it. But this show's completely free. It's on YouTube, of course, Spotify, and be sure to subscribe over there if you're new. Also, I guess like the streams, videos, and also be sure to make sure you are subscribed, even if you're a recurring viewer. Make sure to do that, and make sure to follow on Twitter X as well. So, let me see here, get my notes ready, and we'll get started. Again, a lot of games to predict here. Very excited about this. Let me see here. Everything is ready to go. Sure, sometimes some of these notes can be has some misspelling, so be advised about that. Let me check here. Is anything wrong? I don't think so. Okay. Sometimes we're doing some of these shows. I can have a lot of spelling errors, so just to make sure that's not the case. All right. Don't see any spelling errors. So, all right, we're good. Missouri hosting Bama this week. It's the noon game on ABC. This game to me feels a bit interesting to me. So, of course, you've seen Bama, have 2 big games in a row, right? You had the Georgia game a couple weeks ago. Last week was Vanderbilt. Now it's Missouri on the road. And this will be the first time since the Georgia game and the Florida State game. Well, it's not been that long, but, let me rephrase that. It'll be the first time since, excluding the Georgia game, where you're seeing Bama play a team that they are significantly, I think, better than, talent-wise, I think. Missouri, look, I'm a huge fan of Drinkwitz. I think Bo Pribula, the quarterback there, is doing pretty well so far this year. Even though there was, the whole thing about them doing the 2 quarterback thing. Now, of course, the other guy gets hurt. Pribula now is the starter, and he's been pretty efficient so far. But outside of the Georgia game, this is really the first time that Bama has been on the road in a hostile environment, not named Georgia, not a team that they are way better than. And, it's really interesting. Even after the Vanderbilt win with Bama last week, and I said this in the reaction video that we did early Sunday morning and Saturday night, that, the score looks good, right? 30-14, it looks good. The defense, yes, they gave up a lot of big plays. They still held Vanderbilt to 14. I still don't know if I trust Bama. I don't trust them yet, though I am feeling a lot better about them than I did, back in early August. And sometimes you have these teams, and I think the comparison for Bama this year, at least at this point, it's sort of like that Ohio State team in 2014, where They lost early to Virginia Tech. Everyone's like, oh, man, this team's garbage and they're, gone and buried. But then they start to win and win and win and win. And then, I know there's other stuff too with the injuries with the quarterbacks, but just in general, like everyone was so down on that Ohio State team. And again, they just start to win and win and win and win. And then all of a sudden, you go look, oh, they went from being like barely a top 25 team to they're like a top 5 team in the country. And they've beaten I think who they beat getting to that. I think they beat who was like Michigan State. Now, granted, the Big Ten back then was not as top heavy. It was still like Ohio State, and then you have your occasional Michigan State and like Wisconsin. So obviously, the Big Ten is a little bit different now, but it's more of top heavy than it is just like one team dominating it for the most part. And I think this Bama team, albeit it's in the SEC and it's a little more competitive at the moment, they look like a team that was sort of left for dead week 1. That they're still around. Now, look, they may lose games. Bama's going to lose games, okay? They're not done losing any games. But I'm just saying, in terms of the total team outlook, I don't think a lot of folks realize that this team, Bama, that well. Again, I may not still trust them. They're still a good team, and we're not. I don't think we should necessarily be punting on them, saying, "Oh, they're going 7-5 or 6-6." No. They're still going to lose games, but even with that, because of the safety net of the college football playoff being 12 teams now, or being more than 4 teams, they're still around. And I think that's where that 2014 Ohio State comparison can be there, because Ohio State struggled early, but then, like I mentioned, they continued to win and win and win and win. And they have that impressive win on the road at Michigan State that year. And who knows, maybe that's their Bama's version of that is beating Georgia on the road. Who knows? But so I look at Bama again. I see they're improving, and Ty Simpson looks really good, and the offense is clicking. Ron Williams didn't drop any touchdowns last week. The running game is getting a little bit better with Shane Miller back. But then again, I still don't know if they've completely fixed their competitive anxiety problem they've had, even go back to the Saban days. The latter half of the Saban era. I don't know if they fixed that yet. I don't know if that's still not been fixed yet. I don't know for sure. It's been. The Georgia thing's a little bit different. And the reason why I sort of separate, the Missouri-Florida State game from this Georgia game is because I think it's clear, it is clear that Georgia has a Bama problem, and Kalen DeBoer has that Saban, Kirby Smart defense figured out. For whatever reason, he has the ability just to science his way out of it. He finds ways to get guys open and finds ways to, scheme around that defense. And I think what's really interesting for Bama is that how do I say this? So I listen to, of course, we're fans of Josh Payton, listen to the show, and it's really interesting hearing Josh talk about both on last Sunday's show a couple days ago, and then the show after the Georgia game, and he mentioned, even though they won the Georgia game, it was, we have Vandy up next, back to business. That's interesting. And look, I totally agree with him. Look, I totally believe that Bama had their full attention on Vanderbilt. And, of course, in light of what happened last year. Now, also, I thought they'll be a much closer game, at least by the final score. But it's interesting to hear that, but not necessarily hear that, at least from what I can tell, hear that about the Missouri game. Because Missouri, as we sort of pivot here, while they have been sort of under the radar, I've watched them a little bit. Watched them against Central Arkansas, watched them a little bit against Kansas, watched them Missouri, South Carolina game a little bit, then watched them against UMass. But they're not a bad team. They're scoring, an average of 30 points per game. Defensively, it's been better at most points. And they've given up, at minimum, 10 points, 15 points per game. I think the outlier is definitely the Kansas game, which is interesting because that's, a rivalry game. It was early in the year, and Kansas has a good offense. So I'm not totally concerned about that result. It was just interesting to bring up. So what's also interesting about this Missouri team, I just blanked there. Let me see here if I can get some of the information right here. Okay. Yeah. So what's interesting about Missouri is that, of course, they have Boo Priblia as their starter, but also have a guy named Ahmad Hardy, who is going to be the best running back Bama would have faced all year. No doubt in my mind, and no doubt in any other college football fans' mind either. Ahmad Hardy, I think, is the guy from Louisiana, I believe, or Louisiana Monroe or Louisiana. he's from one of the G5s down there. Speaking of Josh Payne, he made a big deal about it back in his show back in like late winter, early spring. A lot of folks kind of blew it off. I didn't. I kind of had him in back of my mind. It's like, oh yeah, that guy, the Hardy guy, we'll keep that in the files for later on. And he's having a good year so far. And he's a sophomore too, so he's not necessarily one of these like grad transfers or transfers who are like juniors and seniors. No, he still has another year, so he'll be back next year for all intents and purposes, unless he ends up leaving. But he's been fantastic for them. He's been great. Let me look here. Was he from Louisiana? Yeah, he's at Louisiana Monroe. So he's been at Missouri. He almost has, by the way, 1,000 yards. Just by the way, through about 5 games. So that's pretty good for that. And I'll grant you again, the competition's not been, necessarily, that difficult. But it's pretty impressive doing that through 5 games. It's very hard to do that by accident. So for Bama, yeah, that's going to be the toughest running back they have, or at least the best running team that I think Bama has faced all year. With Pribula, and he's dual threat guy as well, but with Ahmad Hardy, got to stop him. And that's why I'm still a bit nervous about this Bama team going on the road into a hostile environment with, by the way, a team that is well rested. They had a bye week last week. That makes me nervous. And I don't know if I can trust them to cover on the road and win. I don't know. If they do it, great. Maybe that's a trend of things that things are really getting fixed. And maybe that Florida State game back in September really was the beginning of a new chapter for Kalen DeBoer at Bama. Now, again, I don't know if I can trust him yet. And again, I feel like this matchup is very unique in that with Pribula, Hardy, and some of these receivers for Missouri don't have to be like, Terrell Owens or Keyshawn Johnson. They just have to be the best versions of themselves, and I think that has to be, accounted for as well. But I think the key for Missouri here is running the football, using Hardy, Ahmad Hardy, Bro Pribula, that combination of those two could be the reason why they win the game. And again, also helps too, and I can't get this off my mind, that they're rested and they didn't play last week. Bama has been, they get the Georgia game, and then you have the Vanderbilt game, 2 very emotional games for different reasons. Now they go to Columbia, Missouri. So, and the last time they've been there, the last 2 times, I believe, if I recall correctly, they have not been close games. So, third time the charm here for Missouri to finally have a close game against Bama. Period. I think every single time they faced them, whether it's in Missouri or when they went to Tuscaloosa a number of years ago or in the SEC championship game, no real close games. So it'd be interesting to see if Missouri can finally get a close game with them. So all that being said, let's look at the model, the CFB Nerds model. I'll be sure to put it in the description. The guys over there, Josh and Daniel, do a good job there for their model. It's free, by the way. You don't have to sign up for anything. So, very thankful for them to have that model available. So their model has this game. Well, actually, we'll circle back to that. So the FanDuel number, FanDuel, by the way, not a sponsor of the show, just the asset we use. They have Bama minus 3.5. Interesting. Again, I think some of that is considering the fact that it's on the road. Missouri's rested. They being Bama, have not faced a rushing attack, at least to this level of productivity and just ability, probably since the Florida State game, or at least on the road. Now you can make the argument, the Vanderbilt maybe Georgia, but Georgia doesn't really have any standout running backs. They don't, and that's a problem for them. I'll get to a little bit later. That has not been really exposed yet outside of the Bama game, but I think that 3.9 number makes sense to me. I think it's about right. But what is interesting is that the CFB Nerds model has this Missouri. Let me double check this just to be sure here, as I did this last night. I just don't remember if this is true or not, so stand by. But according to what I have written down, it's Missouri minus 10.3, which is very interesting that their model is pinging this as the wrong team is favored. Okay. Again, that's not me saying that. That's their model, the guys over at CFB Nerds model. So let me double check here and make sure that is correct. So their model, when I pull it up, it's Missouri scoring. The score is about Missouri 30, Bama 20. Again, I think some of this is baking in. The Florida State result is an outlier. We don't know for sure yet. But still, we haven't seen Bama on the road yet against a team other than Georgia since that Florida State game. So it's largely been very friendly for the most part for Bama as they are now getting into league play. So, so they have Missouri minus 10.3, which is interesting. So they have the wrong team favored. Or at least they're signaling the wrong team is favored. I'm going to predict here, but I think Bama wins the game. I think the number is right. I think it'll be a very close, competitive game. Again, when I say I don't trust Bama, I'm saying I don't trust them to win and cover all the time. Like, I don't think it's going to happen consistently like it did in the prime Saban years, like 2009, 2012, 13. It's not going to happen anymore. And I don't think it'll happen really under Kalen DeBoer. And by the way, I agree with Josh Pape. I mean, how many times did you see Kalen DeBoer win games definitively? Like, maybe outside of the random a Washington State game or whatever. All those games are pretty much very competitive, under a touchdown score. So Bama wins, but I think that number is right. I think that's a very close game. Could be also an overtime game, too. It could be a very competitive, fun game. So looking forward to that. Again, that is a noon kick on ABC. I believe it's, Tess, Jesse Palmer, Katie George will be there. So that crew will be doing that game. So you're checking my emails real quick here. And now Siri's activating on my phone. I don't know why that's being activated. Let's see here. Everything should be fine. But on the email, school email, by the way. That's the prediction for that game. Of course, the show's not over yet. We still have a lot more to go here. And this next one, very, very, very mysterious here. So Oklahoma plays Texas. Of course, it's in Dallas, the neutral site, albeit it's in the state of Texas. Texas, according to FanDuel, is a 2.5-point favorite, despite the fact that they are unranked for the first time in the Sark era since, I believe, 2022, I believe. Yeah, 2022. I believe, that is correct. So, been a couple of years. But they are unranked. And I think, according to, I don't know who brought this up, I believe it's the first time that a team that was number one in the rankings has fallen this far since the an Ole Miss team in the 60s, I believe. And now the most recent example of a team being preseason number one and falling out is I believe is the Matt Barkley USC team in 2012, Lane Kiffin, which is crazy to think about. That was insane. Out of USC's historic prowess in college football, that they are one of the fastest teams to be preseason number one to follow the rankings that quickly. So they're up there as well, but it took a little bit longer. But even despite Texas losing to Florida last week, they're still 2.5. Now, initially on Twitter, I saw this line. I went, Texas minus 2.5, despite the fact that they lost to Florida. And, they were playing Oklahoma, who is rested, by the way, somewhat. They had a bye week, and they had Kent State, which might as well be a bye. And not to mention, we don't know if Sean Mateer's coming back. It looks like he's going to. They're going to try it this week. But then I thought about it, and then I heard, Josh Pape on Twitter, and he hasn't on his show yet today. He'll do it later. But he mentioned that he expects, on Twitter at least, he mentions that he expects Texas to play better this week. So that got me to think, so what does he know that I don't know? But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think what Josh is saying, and that I've started to sort of pick up here a little bit, is that we have these teams like Texas that are very talented defense, offense. They have pieces there, but they have not had a complete game yet against a Division I opponent, against a P4 opponent, or against a P2. They haven't yet. You had the Ohio State game, which defense was well, offense, nah. The Florida game, offense. You scored 21 points, but you still lost the game, and you had a bunch of turnovers too. So that's a little bit different than the game against Ohio State. So it's sort of an outlier, and even with that game. But the two games against your P4, P2, I guess, P2 opponents. That one of them was a low scoring game. The other was a turnover fest, and it got away with you very quickly. And you start off with, I believe, with a lot of mistakes, other than the interceptions. But I believe there was a fumble involved, and I believe a block punt. So that is a bit of an outlier too. So it's really, in a sense, two losses for Texas have been very much so outlandish ways to lose, right? You have the Ohio State team, the Ohio State game, which was very much so a low-scoring defensive game that you just couldn't get the offense going. Period. Whereas the Florida game where there was some big plays had. It's just a lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppiness, and the block punt for safety. So even that game is not. I don't know if it's a real trend for Texas, and I think this line, by the way, it being 2.5 for Texas kind of reflects that the voters, or not the voters, the folks in Vegas still think that this Texas team, even with their flaws, there's still a version of Texas that we have not seen yet that is still out there that is a very, very good team. And I kind of still believe that. Somehow, someway, I still believe there is a version of Texas that is not the Ohio State game and is also not the Florida game. Again, with all this talent that they have there, again, it boggles the mind that Texas, Sark, and this Texas team that has had so many years to build up, recruiting classes, getting guys in the transfer portal, it boggles the mind that they're this bad. I just can't fathom it. And I can't fathom them losing another game. Being 3-3 before Halloween. Like, definition of insanity, that does happen. And again, that was even me initially thinking, man, this Texas 2.5, that seems criminal. But then again, I thought about it. Then I heard what Josh Pate said on Twitter. Again, his show's not gone live yet, so I don't know what he thinks of it publicly. But then I started to think about it. Yeah, I mean, this is Texas. Them being 3-3 before Halloween I can't fathom that. They're too talented to lose as many games. But they could, right? Because Oklahoma, on the flip side, you also have, Brent Venables, really good defensive mind, probably the best defensive mind, at least in the realm of college football. And you can make the argument, yeah, I mean, Matt Patricia's, a good D coordinator both on the college level now and also in the NFL. True. But as a pure college coordinator, Brent Venables is the GOAT right now in terms of an acting DC/head coach. He is the GOAT. I mean, before that, it was probably Will Muschamp and Nick Saban to a certain extent. Now it's Brent Venables and I guess Kirby Smart as well. But I think Brent has a much more of a proven track record overall as a DC. He's been doing it for like 15 years, about the same or just a little bit longer than Kirby has. But he can interchange both. But I think Brent Venables is the best defensive coordinator coach in America right now. Period. I just think he is, and this will be tough for Texas. It'll be tough for Sark. I mean, Grant Shooter's been in a lot of games too, where it's been a lot of. I mean, look, it's a rivalry game. It's Red River. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen in that game, and there's been a lot of weird stuff happening that's happened over the years, and this could be one of them too. It's rivalry. Let me fix some spit here on the screen, but so I still look at Oklahoma. A lot of talent there. Defense is still fairly good, I think. Now, what is interesting is the offense. Still have mystery. I don't know if it's going to be Michael Hawkins or John Mateer. Something about me, now, the more I'm thinking about it, everyone's been picking Oklahoma to win this game, and look, I don't blame you for picking them, but part of me thinks here, whoever is the quarterback here, whether it's Oklahoma starting John Mateer or Michael Hawkins, I think this Oklahoma offense, while it has looked good in a lot of its wins and, even the Auburn game, even the Michigan game, even in those wins, hasn't looked perfect. But even now, whether it's Hawkins or Mateer, who is just coming off an injury, I'm not expecting this offense to be humming on all cylinders. I just don't expect it, personally. I think they will struggle. I think there will be times, if you're an OU fan, where you go, how do we only have, 15 yards of rushing? It's halftime. Like, I can easily see that happening. I mean, I can totally see this Oklahoma offense just really struggle. And I think part of it could be whoever's starting at quarterback, and also I think Texas playing at a higher level and, knowing that they're sort of in wounded, Longhorn mode, backs against the wall, everyone's hating on them. And I don't know. I just can't really, again, going back to Texas, I just can't fathom them being 3-3 before Halloween. Sounds like a T-shirt. But slogan. But yeah, 3-3 before Halloween. I just can't get it out of that mind that that's a possibility here, and I don't see it. I don't see it happening. So yeah, so let's get into what I guess the CFB nerds model has. So they have OU minus 11.9. So they have it the opposite of the Vanderbilt line. They have it Oklahoma winning by more than a touchdown. Like I've been saying, I just think Texas is going to win and cover. Somehow, some way, I think they're going to win this game. I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds weird that I pivoted from thinking, man, this line is criminal to have Texas minus 2.5. But again, as you think about it more, with, again, Texas backs against the wall, wounded Longhorn mentality, your Texas being 3-3 before Halloween, just you can't fathom that. Still on town on that team. And I also expect, too, much like what Josh Paisley sort of echoing on Twitter, did I say the other word? Yeah, I meant to say Twitter, okay? I didn't mean to say the other word. But, yeah, I think that Texas, defensively especially, and overall, team-wise, I expect them to play a lot better, or at least play a little bit up to their competition. I think last week you could have looked at it as a, look-ahead spot to an extent. I think looking back at it, I know it's, hindsight's 2020, but yeah, it kind of was a look-ahead spot. Now here they are, in wounded Longhorn mode, and their backs, they're kind of being pushed around a little bit, both inside that building, I'd imagine, and also by the media and the collectible world. So, yeah, picking Texas to win, I think they cover. Again, I just feel like this Texas team is not as bad as they have looked the past few weeks. To a certain extent. Now, do I expect Arch Manning to go out there and throw for 500 yards? No. I expect this to be probably a low-scoring game, I think. A very defensive game, but I just think Texas is going to find a way to win this game somehow, some way. And not necessarily has to do anything with maybe the John Mateer stuff, if he starts or not. I feel like there's certain limitations on Oklahoma's offense that have not been exposed yet that I think Texas can expose. Maybe that's the best way to put it, is that I think that Texas can expose the flaws that Oklahoma has that they haven't been properly exposed because they haven't lost yet. You faced Auburn, that was a low-scoring game. You faced Michigan, ditto, low-scoring game, close game. You didn't lose, so, you didn't necessarily have those flaws exposed properly. I think you do this Saturday. And if you're a Oklahoma fan, a real shame in that. Yeah, it sucks to lose the Red River Shootout, but yeah, flaws on this team, and I think they will get exposed this Saturday, regardless if he starts at quarterback, by the way. Speaking of UF, you have UF, Texas A&M. This one, I think it's interesting and no one's talking about. Like, nobody's talking about this game. UF, Texas A&M. I believe this is 3:30, I believe. Let me check here. I believe this is 3:30 on ESPN, I think. Let me check here. Let's see here. Texas A&M. Yeah, so it's Mark Jones, Roddy Jones, that crew. Actually, no, it's not 3:30. It's on 7 o'clock. It's a night game on ESPN. So this game's weird to me, or at least the vibe around it's weird. You have Texas A&M who's undefeated, look pretty good, but I kind of feel like the same thing applies to A&M with Texas. A&M is a flawed team. Every single team in the country is flawed. Maybe outside of Ohio State, but even them, I have some thoughts about them, at least some worries. But Texas A&M, to me, even if they're undefeated, they're 5-0. They have huge wins over like Auburn, Notre Dame. Again, they disposed of Mississippi State on Saturday. They, to me, still feel like they're a flawed team. Now, that's not everyone in the country has flaws. I just said that, but much like Oklahoma, I think they have flaws, and they've been exposed a little bit. Like the Auburn game, they've been exposed a little bit. The Notre Dame game, they've been exposed, but I don't think they've been exposed properly yet. And I think Florida, much like with this Texas OU game, feels a lot similar. I think Florida, defensively in a lot of ways, is built to expose them. I think they can do it. I think they can. It's really weird because I feel with Florida, a lot of folks just assume that the team's terrible because the offense has been sucking it outside of last week. No, the team does not suck. It's just one side of the football sucks, much like Texas. One side of the football sucks while the other side has been sort of carrying the team. And I think last week against Texas, speaking of that game, you saw that come together on both sides, with the offense and the defense both having a good game finally. And I wonder, can that be carried with Florida? With all, and we'll touch on the whole Bill Napier thing here in a little bit when we get to discussing some of these coaches who have been feeling a lot of heat lately. Bill Napier, too, their thing, too, is, they have not quit yet. And this is a team that thrives off of momentum, it feels like. You saw it last year, and you're seeing it kind of this year already a little bit to a certain extent. And I worry about that for Texas A&M. You're going against a hot team, or at least a team that is sort of in takeoff mode, at least could be in takeoff mode, or at least getting ready to. If you're Texas A&M, you got to cut off the head of the snake. You got to do it. You got to end it early. You can't let Florida hang around. And doing that means playing sound on defense, frustrating DJ Lagway, getting that home crowd involved. It's a night game again. Marcel Reed can't turn the ball over. You have to be consistent. A lot of their pass catchers too have to be reasons why they win this game, and and they pull away from Florida. You cannot let them hang around. Now, if you're Florida on the flip side, again, defense, you have to show up here. DJ Lagway and company offense, can you build off of what you did last week against Texas, against A&M on the road? Against A&M on the road. It's going to be tough. So doubt it's going to be tough. You're dealing with probably the most hostile crowd you have faced all year, I think, even including the game at Miami. I think this is going to be the toughest crowd you'll face probably all year, frankly, I think. A lot of these guys have not been there before, but at least to College Station before. This is also a revenge spot for Florida. After what happened last year, they got embarrassed at home, by the way, if you don't remember that. But, revenge spot for them. This is a huge game for them. Huge game for at least building off of what you did last week, sort of, continuing that momentum. And I wonder for Florida, can you package that? Can you package that and say, you know what? Let's use that as momentum. We still have the rest of our league schedule in front of us. Let's go have fun. Let's go prove to the country that we're not as bad as our record at the moment says we are. And it's possible. And again, with A&M too, it's really interesting is that they have had several games at home, and a lot of them have been very different, right? You have, or at least games in general have been very, very different. You have the Notre Dame game. It was a shootout. Auburn, slugfest, won. Mississippi State, physical, defensive performance. They're able to really just overpower Mississippi State. So they've proved they can win different ways, but they have not faced a team like Florida that has a different pulse, right? Auburn, it seems like they're sort of dead to me. At least I think they're dead. You have Notre Dame, which is a bit of a weird thing. Defensively, they've been way worse than they were last year. So this is really interesting for them. They're playing a team that has, a dynamic quarterback who can run around, a defense that is actually good, and an offense that shown last week when they can perform and get guys back healthy, they're not bad. Now, granted, I'm not a big fan of Billy Napier calling the plays, but different story. So let's look at what the model, the old CFB Nerds model. So they have Texas A&M. Actually, before you do that, let's do FanDuel number. A&M minus 7.5 is the number for FanDuel, which is a bit high for me. I'll say. The FanDuel number is about in line with the CFB Nerds model. They're a little bit higher. They're going 10.8 with Texas A&M. I think A&M is going to win the game. I think with Florida, and look, I picked against them last week, and look, they can win again this week. I don't know if I feel comfortable with this, which is why I'm going A&M to win the game outright. I think being at home helps, but I think UF is going to really show and really represent themselves well. I think this will be a low-scoring game, kind of like a 27-21 type game, or a 24-27 type game. I'm not counting out Florida. Okay, I'm not counting them out. They haven't quit yet in Billy Napier, although, the NFLC game they kind of did. But most of that was, I guess, turnover-based. But I can't get it out of my head that this Florida team hasn't quit yet under Billy Napier, which is why, when we talk about the assortment of coaches that are under a lot of heat right now, why that's a very strange situation with him. So, taking A&M to win, UF to cover. All right, more. Indiana at Oregon. This is the 3:30 game on CBS. Game day will be there, of course, for CBS. Brad, Gary, Jenny Dale, all of them, all of the friends over there covering this game. Oregon, by the way, is a 7.5-point favorite on FanDuel. So, of course, whenever we do games like this, where it definitely seems like we all know who's going to win the game, right? I think most of us are picking Oregon to win the game, right? It's at home. They have not, by the way, lost at home since joining the Big Ten. Yeah, since joining the Big Ten, I think the last time they lost at home was, was it against, who was it? Was it against Oregon State? I don't think so, but it's been, translation, it's been a long time since they've lost at home. So I believe now they have like one of the longest home winning streaks, I believe. So now that Georgia's has gone down, but so this game is interesting to me. Kind of a game that's it's being built up, right? You have game day going there, but I just don't think a lot of folks have watched a whole lot of these teams that much. I mean, I think most of us have seen Oregon going to Penn State, but that was the first time you saw them. Now, if you were a sicko like me, you saw them against their FCS team and against Oklahoma State. and including Northwestern too in there, and they've looked great. They've dominated all the teams they have faced, with the exception of Penn State, which was an overtime game. So, and by the way, I think Oregon is rested, by the way, so that does help. I believe Indiana was also rested as well. Let me double check here. Indiana football schedule. Let me see if they rested or not. I believe they were. Yes, so they are both off the bye. So there's no bye advantage here. So it kind of makes it a little more difficult to predict. But I think both these teams, again, they seem like mysterious to me, both these teams, even though everyone has them ranked very highly. But I think of these teams, what the problem is, or at least, well, not a problem, just what I've observed, is I feel like a lot of folks look at Oregon and Indiana and go, oh, yeah, we've watched the highlights, and we watched the Penn State game for Oregon, watched the Illinois game for Indiana. Yeah, these are really good, very good teams, but I haven't seen them play a lot, which is understandable, but, it's not, I don't know, it's not something that I don't know, I guess agree with, why being more of a highlight type person, I do watch all the games and let's try to watch the majority of them. But I think with Oregon, what's really interesting is that can they sustain what they've been doing outside the Penn State game, which is dominating their competition like they're supposed to. Dominating Northwestern, dominating Oklahoma State, dominating their FCS and their G5s. Can they continue to do that? I don't know if they can, right? I don't know if that is a sustainable thing. As for Indiana, kind of the same thing, right? They've been sort of dominant in their own way, right? You have the Old Dominion game, which, by the way, looks more better now that ODU's actually have a low-key, sneaky, good G5 team. But I kind of wonder, to a certain extent here, if both these teams are sort of mirror images of each other. I think they kind of are mirror images of each other. And I don't think that's a bold statement to say. I kind of surprised no one else brought that up, that these two teams are very similar to each other, right? They both have disposed of their competition, but they've also struggled in their games. Again, these basically, if both these teams are to look at each other in the mirror, they're basically seeing each other. They're fishing on offense. Defense has been just a dynamite for them, and now they're facing each other. And it's kind of this immovable object beating a unstoppable force type of thing. And I kind of wonder too, like, what would this game look like for Indiana to win? Because again, I think everyone's picking Oregon, but they're doing it just because of default. Has anyone watched Indiana before? Besides the Illinois game, I've seen them a little bit, although the Iowa game was on Peacock, but I've seen highlights of that game, but I've seen them outside of watching highlights of the Iowa game. I've seen them every single week pretty much. I've had a chance to watch them every single game. Again, they're very physical. Mendoza's been great. A lot of folks are hyping them up, especially for NFL stuff, but I just wonder, do they have the athletes to compete with Oregon? I think they can, but I just don't know if it's, really sustainable enough to garner a win. I think they can do it. I think they have a good coach in Kirk Cinetti. They have good staff up there. They obviously have, maybe they got the best quarterback Oregon has faced all year, and that's including Drew Aller. So I look at this game as, probably going to be a low-scoring game. I'm not expecting it to be like a game into the 30s, although I say that and that happens. But, I expect, both these teams to be mirror images of each other. I think they're both physical teams that emphasize running the football and playing good defense. And when those two meet, that's, a lot of things can happen, right? You can, I don't know. Again, I just kind of wonder, again, if a lot of folks are sort of sleeping on this game being potentially very sneaky competitive, but you have Dante Moore, you have Mendoza, you have both of these offenses, you have the the young receivers for Oregon, you have Indiana, who so far has good defense, but I think what this game also represents too a little bit is this whole train derailment theory. I think this applies to Indiana. Well, they have been the benefactor of it with the Illinois game. I wonder, have they faced a team yet that has either been able to properly expose them, or they just faced a team that would just had a lot of injuries, being Illinois, because they had a lot of their corners were out. So with this train derailment theory, if you're new here, what it means is you have a team. Think when trains derail, not a crash and it hit a vehicle or something, God forbid. When a train derails, is normally the small things start to add up, whether it's a rail that's not been properly placed, or maybe it's an overgrown track or whatever, stuff like that. Sort of like minor things that sort of build up that leads to an accident happening, or a derailment happening. Happens in football all the time. Happens to the Buccaneers. well, it was a little bit different. That was more of a red light theory type situation. But with Indiana, I think with them, it could be a situation where you have like a blocked punt, a fumble, and just little things that happen that sort of make you fall behind in the game very quickly. And that could happen here on the road, especially in a very hostile environment. Because, from what I can tell, outside of Iowa, they have not been on the road in a, true hostile environment that is really threatening. So there's that as well. So we'll look at what the FanDuel number is and the CFB Nerds model. So again, the number from FanDuel, I think I already mentioned it, is 7.5 towards Oregon. The CFB Nerds model, though, has Indiana minus 9.5. So they're seeing the wrong team's favorite significantly, which is interesting. So because of that, because of the model and the FanDuel number, I'm going to split the difference here. So I do believe this will be a low-scoring game. I do believe both of these guys, Mendoza, Dante Moore, I think they will compete fairly well going against each other's defense. But I do expect this to be, again, very low-scoring game, and also expect it to be close. So I think Oregon wins, but I don't expect this to be a blowout. I don't think. I do believe this will be a very competitive game. I think clock management could be the key here. Whoever has the most time of possession here, given how both these teams are going to be very similar to each other, I think Oregon wins. I think Indiana does cover. Get some water real quick. You haven't had to take a water break yet. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to mute here on YouTube, and we will continue here in just a moment. Again, by the way, if you're watching the show live or on Spotify, again, if you're listening, if you're new or even a recurring listener or returning listener or someone who's listened consistently, just make sure you subscribe. Not that hard. Just YouTube, Spotify. You don't have to sign up for anything. You don't get sent emails or anything like that towards you. It's all free of charge. So make sure you do that. All right, we have let's see here. I believe one more game left. Yeah, one more game to cover, and then we'll get into the Tuesday poll, thoughts on some coaches, and then we get into Bucs Seahawks reaction. So Georgia is going to Auburn for the first time in a night game since 2012 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I know they've had night games over in Athens, but in terms of the games at Jordan-Hare, they've usually been like 3:30 on CBS back in the day. Kind of weird to say that, but yeah, first time since 2012, that awful year, that Auburn is hosting Georgia at night. 7:30 kick on ABC. Not, by the way, Chris Fowler and Kirk. They are doing the Texas game, Oklahoma game, Red River Shootout. So it'll be Sean, Greg, and Wally will be doing this game on ABC. So it will not be the main crew. Which, by the way, which is really weird that Chris Fowler and Kirk together have not done a game in Auburn at all, period. Now they've done Auburn games. They've done like the Georgia-Auburn game in 2020, but that was in Athens. They did Penn State Auburn, but I was in State College, and they did the Auburn-Oregon game, but I was in neutral site. So both of those two have not done a Auburn game at home yet together. Now, Kirk has been to Auburn for a game that he called, the Clemson game in 2010. So he's been there before to call a game, but he's not, been there to call an Auburn game at Auburn. And I think the last they've had opportunities to do it, but, it just hasn't happened yet. So maybe this year, maybe later in the year, if they're good, once the Iron Bowl happens, maybe they'll do it, but probably unlikely at this point. But so yeah, Auburn, Georgia, under the lights there on ABC. So this is interesting to me. So the FanDuel line, if you're wondering, if you haven't looked at it yet, or if you haven't, been told about it, what do you think the line is for FanDuel from FanDuel? What do you think the line is? Is it, Georgia minus 10, minus 15, minus 100 maybe? It's Georgia minus 3.5. That might shock you, but it makes sense to me. And the reason why it makes sense is it's on the road. And we have not seen Georgia so far, at least this version of Georgia, this Georgia team this year, do well on the road, i.e. the Tennessee game. You saw what happened there. They got behind late. Yes, they did come back, make adjustments, and they won overtime. But it wasn't a clean operation. It was very sloppy, a lot of miscues on defense. And that's what this number is there. Again, it just, we have not seen Georgia, at least this year, perform well on the road. And you're going into a hostile environment at Auburn that is still going to be hostile, despite the fact the team's bad. And while most of us in the media, I guess including me, think that there will be some sort of a regime change there with Auburn. But I can say all of that. I can say, the team's been bad, but they're rested. They didn't play last week. They're rested. So that's one. And also, the fans are still going to show up. Even as bad as Auburn has been lately, within this past decade or this current decade so far, even with them being as bad as they have been, the fans are still showing up. Like, students didn't leave. Like, they're still showing up. Like, the university didn't shut down just because the team sucked. No. Those fans will still show up. There'll still be an incredible atmosphere. I'm sure, have the light show they've had for a couple years now. Whenever they score a touchdown, yes, I do expect it to be a hostile environment. Despite the fact the team's been really, really bad and haven't not won a conference game yet, I fully expect them to show up. And not to mention, too, it's the first time they've been back there in that stadium in an entire month, I think. So they'll be there and they'll show up. Not to mention, too, it's Cam Newton getting his jersey retired, which kind of already was retired, but it's official now. But even unveil on the college football video game, you can still wear whatever jersey you want, even the ones that have been retired. So it's kind of redundant. But anyway, so that's also happening. So they'll be there. So you have Georgia going to this hostile environment. They faced one already of Tennessee, and you saw what happened there. Now they're going to one into an environment that's even more hostile to them because it's at night and it's at Jordan here, where yes, they have won this. They have won every single matchup that's been played since 2017. So they have not lost to Auburn in about 10 years. But even though they have won every single game in the series since then, most of their trips, though, to Auburn, besides, I believe, 2021, which that got away pretty quickly for Auburn. That was the only full year of the Brian Harsin experience. Every single game there has been very competitive. 2020, what was it, 2023, 23, and 2019 have been fairly competitive games. Both of them were one-score games. I expect this to be a one-score game. I do expect it to be that. I do expect, again, the hostile environment, I think will affect Georgia just a little bit. I think Auburn, even though, yes, they have looked bad, especially against their teams they faced so far this year, I expect them to play up to at least play up a little bit. Again, sort of like going back to the last time both Georgia and Bama were at Jordan here, it was 2023, Hugh Freeze's first year. Both of those games are one-score games where Auburn was either leading or had the chance to win the game late. I think the same thing's going to happen here. I think Auburn will compete. I think they will show up. I think that team, even despite all their flaws, especially on offense, Jackson Arnold and the receivers, I expect them to test that Georgia secondary, which I don't necessarily fear, frankly. I think that Georgia secondary has problems. I think Tennessee exposed it. I think Bama exposed it, even though they couldn't connect on some of them. I think Auburn can't do it. I think they can. At least they're going to try. Now, whether that will work out or not remains to be seen, right? You have Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson. He's been on the milk card and hasn't showed up yet. Nick Singleton, Bryce Kane, all these wide receivers Auburn's brought in over the past several years, or over not several years, but I guess over the past year or two. They're still there and they're still talented. I mean, I've said it, I keep on saying this, but Cam Coleman was in the same recruiting class as Ryan Williams. Well, he reclassified, but he's in the same recruiting class as him, Williams, and Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. So he's that type of caliber receiver, and he hasn't had, at least to my knowledge, a big game yet. I mean, he had the A&M game last year, Cam Coleman, but he hasn't had one this year yet. Could it be this game? Could it be that Auburn, much like Tennessee and Bama, exposed a Georgia secondary that, frankly, didn't get exposed last week against Kentucky, which makes sense. That team's as bad as Auburn has been, probably a lot worse. But even said that, Georgia's still Georgia. They still have a very competent coaching staff. They still have Kirby Smart, who, even in a lot of these hostile environments when they go into them, like Tennessee, Auburn, they still win. I mean, they still find ways to adjust and, defensively, and they find a way. They somehow find a way to win a lot of these games. But again, I expect this to be very close. Anyone saying this will be a blowout, or at least a major blowout, like 10 points plus, I just don't see it happening. I do expect this to be a one-possession game, a very competitive game. So I still have to say, I think Georgia. We'll get to that in just a moment. So the FanDuel line again, 3.5 for Georgia. The CFB Nerds model has Georgia minus 11.8. So they think, at least their model suggests Georgia should win going away. I don't know if I'm going to go that high. Actually, just find a spelling error there. There we go. Fixed that. I just realized that. The word prediction was spelled wrong. So my prediction here, I think Georgia does win the game outright. I think they win. But I do think they cover slightly. It's not a big cover. I think they cover... what is it? The spread is 3.5 Georgia. I expect maybe a 5.1 to I don't know, like 26, 21, something like that. Very minor cover. But, yeah, I feel like Georgia will win. But if Auburn does win, it won't totally shock me. But, we'll see. But, yeah, I think Georgia wins. I think they slightly cover. I think this could get crazy. I will say that this could get a little bit weird in this game for Auburn. Again, like I said, they haven't won this game. This is a rivalry game in almost 10 years. So at some point it's going to end, right? All right, Tuesday pool, week 6 edition. We did this on Thursday last week. We were doing it on its proper date on Tuesday. And, from what I've been told, having on good authority, that another show who will be on here in a while is also doing their poll, not power rating, poll on the same day. Are they copying us? I don't know. But maybe we inspired them to move things around. Anyway, so as per usual, we'll start from going from 25 down to 20, or 25, 20, and then we'll continue going down. So from 25 to number 1. So we're counting down. So from number 25 to, we'll just do 25 through 20 here, the first 5. USC at 25, they're back in the poll. Arizona State at 24, they're back. Or actually, no, I think this is their debut, actually. So they're in. All these teams here from 25 to 23 are 4-1. So just so you know, if you haven't been keeping track of the standings and whatnot and the records. So USC 25, Arizona State 24. Cincinnati debuting as well. Welcome in. They're at 23. Iowa State, by the way, dropped out. Right, I think rightfully so. So yeah, that's the newbies. If we're the ones that are in, well, at least those two, Arizona State and Cincinnati, are new for the pool in general. USC's is back. This next one's also back. Memphis, they're back in. They're 6-0. They're undefeated. Yes, a relatively easy schedule, but they do have some games coming up that we'll see if they really are for real or not. But, look, you're a very good team and, a very good G5 team, and they're not to be trifled with. Memphis, I believe they have, North Texas, I believe, or USF coming up. So they'll be tested, but, they're so far so good so far. I don't know if that made any sense. So good so far. Anyway. But yeah, they're at 22. 21, Notre Dame, they're 3-2. Been pretty sloppy. I still don't know if they're right, and nor do I believe they'll be in the playoff. I just don't. Great Bud Elliott finished 10-2. No way, Jose, they're being let in. I know a lot of folks will disagree with me on that, but look, your rest of your schedule. I agree with Bud. Besides USC, I don't know if USC is going to be anything meaningful by then. But outside of USC, nobody on your rest of your schedule that you have left is going to a bowl game, or at least any of your P4 opponents are going to be anything, to write home about. So, if I'm a Notre Dame fan, very, very concerned about their playoff chances now. Texas, they're still in. You lose to Florida. Yeah, that doesn't look good, but, at least you're wearing Penn State. So I think they have the better losses, but, they're in at 20. By the way, I did have Penn State dropping out, so they're gone. Much like the AP poll, they're gone. But unlike the AP poll, I think Texas being still hanging on there. I would at least put them on there, but whatever. Let's see here, 19. Let's see, 19 through 16 here. Illinois at 19. Virginia moving up a little bit. Actually, let me make this change here. Actually, I didn't mean to actually do this. So I don't know how I forgot to change that. There's a little error here. So correction. So Virginia is actually at 17. Florida State's behind them at 18. That should have been like that. Honoring the head-to-head. That should be how it is. So, yes, FSU 18, Virginia 17. And then Missouri at 16. They're undefeated. They were off last week, so it didn't matter. They didn't really move anywhere. Didn't move up and down. All right, top 15 time. Vanderbilt, 15. Didn't move that much. You lose to Bama on the road. No shame in that. They're still a good team. Let's see here. Indiana debuting, I believe. Or at least they're back in, I think. A lot of teams lost. Penn State lost. You get skyrocketed up there. They're at 14. Tennessee at 13. 12, South Florida. The AP poll let them back in this week. They still haven't been in there. They're still a good team. LSU at 11. They're off this week. Or I think they're off. No, they're not. They're off this week. They're back this week, I believe, against South Carolina. So we'll talk more about that game on Thursday. But, yeah, so they are at number 11. Let's see here. So top 10 time. I guess we'll just knock it out. Number 10, Georgia Tech. At 9, Georgia. Bama at 8, honoring the head-to-head there. I know a lot of you will mention, well, what about the Florida State thing? Well, I think it's kind of clear now that Florida State and Bama have sort of we can separate them. We can separate them now, based on what we have seen so far. But if it ends up being the case where they start to take on more losses, then maybe we'll honor the head-to-head again, or at least reflect in the rankings. But at the moment, I think Bama being ahead of Florida State, I think we can say that at least to a certain extent. I think that's reasonable. I think so. Bama at 8, Ole Miss at 7. They're off a bye. They didn't play last week. Oklahoma is at 6. Texas A&M at 5. Texas Tech, big bump there, as 4. I think they're a really good team. I think they are probably going to go undefeated, I think, in the Big 12. I don't think they're losing the game. At least at the moment, I don't think they're losing the game. So they're at 4. Oregon at 3. Ohio State at 2. New number 1 here. Miami at number 1. And that is the Tuesday poll for Week 6. So how about that? We get one more drink of water here. I'm going to talk about some of these coaches here real quick, and we'll get into Bucs Seahawks reaction. Okay, we're back. So there's been a lot of chatter about a lot of these coaches. You know, especially after last week, I think we've probably need time, or need some time here to sort of check on some coaches here, at least discuss, have some thoughts on. We have 4 coaches, or actually 5, actually, we'll talk about. One of them was a late addition. I forgot that in. But first up here, James Franklin. Everyone, of course, has an opinion on him. You know, you lose to Penn State, or Penn State losing to Oregon. You know, you're coming off the bye. The dynamics were in your favor. You were favored to win the game. It was at home. It was a whiteout. You basically have to revolve yourself. Then you turn around, went to L.A., not for sightseeing, but to actually play a football game. You lost to what was a dead zombie UCLA team with their offensive coordinator now, for good reason, being the star of the show. So everyone has an opinion on James Franklin. Everyone's saying he's to be fired and this and that, and he's stupid and he's an idiot. I have been a staunch defender of James Franklin, not because he's a friend of the show, because I think he's been unfairly mistreated as an overrated coach and this and that and whatnot. And I do agree with Josh Pate. He's the most properly rated head coach in America. He's not elite. He is good. He is a good coach. And that's all he is. That's all he has been for the most part. So my overall opinion of him has not changed. That's why I kind of, do disagree with the whole firing thing. They're not getting rid of him. I mean, that buyout, I'm sure everyone's looked at it now. No, they're not going to buy him out. And if he were to leave or get fired, it'll have to be, down the road, I would imagine. If we get fired now, him leaving though, it's different. Maybe another job comes open and he ends up leaving. Whatever, if that happens, whatever, that's possible. But with Franklin, I'm not saying everything's okay. At least for his job security, he's fine. He's not getting fired. But like I've said before, and I'll say it again, I sort of mentioned this on the early Sunday morning, late Saturday night reaction, and also during the summer, that I mentioned that if things were to go off the rails with Penn State this year, given everything they're expected to do this year, compete for a national championship and be a really good team, that I said if they failed to do that, the fan base and the college football world will never forgive him for that. I still agree with that. They won't forgive him for it. It will be something on his resume. It'll be a black stain on his resume that just won't. It will never go away. It'll be on his permanent record, obviously. But the college football world, they will never forgive him for it. Including me. I kind of feel like that a lot of folks would not forgive him for that, and I think rightfully so. So a long ways to go. Yes, I do acknowledge that, and yes, the 12-team playoff, they can wiggle their way in by beating Ohio State and beating Indiana in the next few weeks, and maybe somehow, some way, getting into the Big Ten championship game. But it's going to be tough. So, while I don't think he's getting fired, I don't think all this stuff about him getting fired and folks wanting to pay his buyout money. It's not going to happen. I think James Franklin's fine, unless if he's going to leave, it's going to be on his own decision. He's not no one's going to fire him. But then again, I can say that, but also believe that a lot of folks, if this thing ends up being what it's looked like it's going to be, folks are not going to forgive him for it, for wasting a opportunity to do something special up there. Now, this next was interesting. So with Bill Belichick, of course, it came out before the show that I think they were going to do this Hulu documentary thing, and it turns out they're not doing it. Though I think the feeling is they still have the footage, so they're just not releasing it, which that's what that translates to. But with Belichick, and I agree with Josh Payton here. Now, kind of echo his sentiment. Is UNC serious about football? Are they serious about it? Because it feels like to me that USC, or not USC, UNC, I just don't think they're serious about it. It's almost like to me with Bill Belichick, it's like he's dealing it, at least in my opinion, there's two ways you can look at the UNC Belichick thing. You can look at it as Belichick was serious about getting into college football. He wanted to do it. He thought there was an opportunity to do it. Going into a fairly decent program that, was not in a terrible shape when Mac Brown got fired or retired or whatever you want to call it. It wasn't in bad shape. He thought, hey, I can take it over, bring in sort of this NFL mentality, get these kids ready to go to the NFL because I've been there and I can teach it. At least that's what he thought. And it was going to work out. Now, the other camp is, he's just going there just to benefit himself and to sort of gain attention. So look at that and go, is USC did it again? Is North Carolina serious about football? Are they serious about it? Because to me, based on the actual hire and the way this thing has gone, I don't think UNC is serious about it. I don't think North Carolina is serious about college football. It sucks because college football, even, despite them being a basketball school, college football is the revenue driver for them. That's the sport that makes the most revenue, period, throughout the country. But yeah, I don't know, man. I really do doubt that Belichick is doing this for UNC, or at least for the benefit of UNC. I think he's doing it to benefit himself. I think there is a reasonable conclusion to think that, or not a reasonable conclusion, a reasonable person can think that. I don't blame you for thinking that. And I just don't know if UNC is taking football seriously. So now, is Belichick leaving? Is he going to retire or whatnot? I don't know if he's going to resign or not. I'm not expecting him to. I expect him to be back next year. And I don't know, man, just all the distractions with the girlfriend and whatnot. UNC as a whole doesn't sound serious to me. They don't feel like a serious program. So there's an Elf Napier mentioned this earlier. Again, still a lot of folks still want him fired. And, that's understandable. If you're a Florida fan, if you're mad about, them 2 years in a row, starting off really slow, but then getting things going late when it's too late, I understand that. Now, is he getting fired? Is Billy Napier, is his job in real jeopardy? I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say no. He's not getting fired because his team is not quitting on him. Now, at least at the moment. Now, if his team does start to quit and this thing really starts to snowball, then sure, we can have a different discussion. At the moment, the fact that they won last week, and I think that there was a good chance that they go in this Saturday against A&M, he's not going anywhere. I mean, I know it sounds like broken record, but I agree with Josh Payton. He's said this he's been saying this for a couple of years now. Florida, in terms of their, staffing, building up their program and having, the right people in the right places in terms of like they're filling up their staff and having their behind the scenes stuff, they're really good at it. I mean, if you were to go visit Florida, at least from what I've been told from people like Josh Pate, if you were to visit UF and go to Gainesville, which, here in Jacksonville, not far from there, if you were to go there and visit Billy Napier and his staff and go see the program, at least, see what it looks like from an organizational standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, they are up there with all the other programs that are competing for national championships. They are there. It's the procedural stuff. It's the on-the-field stuff that's really been hindering them over the past couple of years. And some of it this year can be attributed to DJ Lagway not being fully healthy and not being able to have a lot of reps with the young receivers they have. That's the problem. So, I mean, look, you can be mad at Billy Napier. You can be mad at the system. You can be mad at, Scott Strickle and all of them. But at the moment, look, this thing is like last year where they start to catch on late. And again, I agree. Them starting off slow, that can't happen next year. If Bill Napier is to be the coach going forward, they've got to find different ways to do it, whether it's bringing in a new play caller and Napier being a CEO, which probably needs to happen. They cannot start off slow next year. They cannot do that because I don't think any Florida fans want to go through another year of having to go through, oh man, we suck, in early October, September, and then we turn it on in late October and November after Halloween. I don't think Florida fans want to deal with that. Florida has much higher expectations than starting off slow and then finishing strong and after Halloween. So do I think Bill Napier is getting fired at the moment? Probably not. I think at this point he's safe for now. And this next one, though, I don't know for sure. That's Hugh Freeze. We talked about this ad nauseum. I do firmly believe that, if they this thing this Saturday, if they lose to Georgia, I do believe that does sort of, at least in my opinion, make it to where a lot of Auburn folks, if you haven't yet, are going to hop on the bandwagon of, yeah, there's going to be a regime change at the end of the year. As has been said, throughout, a lot of the summer and spring, that the thinking is, and I think it's pretty clear, that there is going to be a lot of SEC jobs open because none of them opened last year. And no, Arkansas is not included. That was going to happen regardless. I think a lot of folks are referring to LSU, Auburn, Florida, and I think Kentucky, though that one we'll see. But the three big ones: Auburn, LSU, Florida. One of a certain number of those three we're going to open up. I think Auburn's going to be the one that's going to open up. I just hate to say it. I just feel like they are, in the modern world of college football, why is it so tough for Auburn to score 10? And what was it they scored against? What was the number they scored against A&M? I think it was Oklahoma. I know they scored 10 against Texas A&M. But let me double check here. What was it? 16? Yeah, 17 and 10. So why is it so hard in modern college football to score a combined 27 points in 2 games? In modern college football, where the rules should be in your favor on the offensive side, which Hugh Freeze is supposedly an offensive expert. And look, I understand facing, Oklahoma and, it's Brent Venables, and look, he's a really good defensive-minded coach. But even still, you can put up more than 17 points. That boggles the mind. That boggles the mind that you are an offensive coach in Hugh Freeze. And it's just this year, and this is just, exclusive to this year. It happened last year and the year before. And look, if he does get fired, that loss to New Mexico State his first year, I think a lot of folks are going to look back and say, yeah, that's where things really started to fall off in terms of the faith in Hugh Freeze. That's where his approval rating started to go really down, in my opinion. So, it kind of is what it is with him. And, yeah, I do expect that there will be a regime change there, more than likely, sooner rather than later. And the last one here, Sark. I know a lot of folks are, dogging on him, but he's fine. I think in a lot of ways this is probably going to end up being a lost season. I think the comparison here is sort of like Auburn in 2018, speaking of Auburn. But even though, I picked them to win this Saturday against Oklahoma. But, Sark and all of them, it's okay. Yes, there's some stuff you need to address, like the O-line and maybe, some different stuff you need to do potentially. But, in terms of the behind-the-scenes stuff and look at stuff they have to do, or that stuff they'll have to do come, spring and early winter. So at least after the season is over. But Sark's fine. There's no real problems with him. But, this is a lost season, and they'll get through it, and they'll be back next year, and we'll see what they do. Real quick here, Bucs, Seahawks reaction. Of course, the Bucs win 38-35 on the road. Classic game. Classic shootout. Very entertaining game. I think it is clear that, obviously the Tampa defense, we've talked about this ad nauseum. Their pass defense is bad. Of course, everyone was making a big deal about it after the preseason, saying, "Oh man, the Bucs defense is fixed. They're ready to go." No. One preseason wasn't going to fix the entire defense. That's not been fixed. Once again, Baker and the offense had to save themselves, and even with Mike Evans and Bucky Irving being out, they still put up a lot of good numbers, man. Having Emeka Ibuka being there again, like I said before, he's your insurance policy from when with Mike and Chris. He has been showing up every single week, and like I said on Twitter, I can confidently say this. The best way I can describe the Bucs offense, they're weapons of mass destruction. They are. Even with the injuries going on, they have been just mushroom cloud. Every time they get the football, it seems like they have a tendency to have big play. Buka's been doing it. Sterling Shepard, he's a budget receiver, but even he had a big touchdown late. Kate Otten showed up finally, having a couple of big catches. Rashard White had a good game. So just all around, just a good game. And look, if you're a Seahawks fan, it sucks. Sam Darnold ultimately making that mistake. And by the way, Devontae David, the legend, getting that late crucial turnover there. So huge win for them, and unfortunately, they get rewarded by playing the 49ers coming to town, a team they have not beaten this decade or even going back to 2018 or 2019 as far as I can remember. So that game is on CBS. It's late crew, so Tony, Jim, and Tracy will be there. So it's the game of the week there on CBS at home. I believe, is that the first time that crew's been in Tampa for about 2 years? How about that? First time back there. So We'll preview that game on Thursday. So, yeah, Bucs 38-35 over the Seahawks. Very, very pleasantly surprised to see this team respond the way they did after what happened against the Eagles. So, we'll be back, of course, on Thursday. May start to show a little bit earlier because I think we're going to get here in Florida some thunderstorms, afternoon storms, not the classical sea breeze storms. I guess kind of, but we're sort of phasing out of that. But even around this time of the year, we can sometimes get storms to at least one more big sea breeze day. So I think the thinking, or at least the wording is that might be happening Thursday, so it may start to show a little bit earlier than usual, but we'll see. Also, by the way, as a weather enthusiast, yes, I'm aware that the EF5 drought has officially ended with the tornado that was in North Dakota, I believe. I forget the town name. But, that was, sort of breaking news yesterday that was re-rated to an F5 or EF5, actually. The new, the current Vegeta scale. Which, by the way, if you haven't been following the weather, or at least this whole EF5 drought, it's been lasting for over a decade. I mean, the last EF5 up until this past June now, as it turns out, was Moore Oklahoma back in 2013. That's how long it's been. And so that's pretty amazing that we've had no official EF5, even though there's been other ones like the Tri-State tornado in 2021, the Rolling Fork, Mississippi in 23, I believe. So there's some tornadoes that have gone close to that EF5 status, but now this random tornado and North Dakota of all places. And I think the reasoning was because of the train. Speaking of train derailment, a theory earlier, an actual train derailment was, I believe, the reason why they changed it, I believe, and some other minor damage stuff. So, some interesting news there. But, of course, we'll be back on Thursday. Upset alerts, all of that. More thoughts, of course, on college football. And maybe we'll get some Marvel news, I think. We'll see. But for the most part, it's been pretty quiet. But, I should check that, actually. I think there is a rumor going around about the Avengers of Doomsday trailer potentially being debuting here in about 2 months or so, or 2.5 months. So there's that. But so until Thursday, we're still be back, usual time. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of yourselves and each other. And we'll see you guys on the next stream.